before last, you started to talk about some of the primary and secondary aspects of our task. I just wondered if you had anything more to say about that.
Like what? Did we give you the clues?
Yes, we did. We talked a little bit about it at the last meeting.
Okay.
Do you remember our talking about it? Did you know what we were talking about when we talked about it?
Not specifically, no.
Well, it's what we were talking about when we said that, like we said, some of the secondary aspects of your task is what you experience automatically when the primary aspect of your task doesn't seem to go as you would have it. And the way we related that was how neat it is at the next level turns seeming mistakes or failures or delays or what might seem to be a wrong choice or when things don't seem to go the way you think they should go, even that time is not lost. Now that's secondary. In other words, like we brought up that if somebody was trying very hard to conquer something and in spite of their best effort, they had a period of time when they thought that they weren't succeeding. And what they go through during that period, if their next level mind is in the right place, they do a secondary task because they're even building a hatred for that characteristic and for the weakness that they think that they're experiencing in being slow to conquer or slow to progress in conquering an area of difficulty. Now, and during that period, in other words, you're sending out different signals than you would be sending out simply upon conquering. Can you understand that? And both are valuable. Both are just as valuable. But what we said is don't ever let that secondary become a primary. Don't ever say, well, it's okay if I don't do my best here because even if I don't do my best, what I'm going to send out as a result of my secondary task is of value. We can't think that way. We have to always think in primary terms. Now, but let's say that we're thinking in primary terms, we're not permitting ourselves to think in secondary terms, and we're trying to, in our terminology, we're trying to get a better handle on some area of some characteristic that the vehicle has a weakness in. And we try, and we can't understand why, with what seems to be our best effort of trying at times, the progress isn't better. In other words, sometimes you would even think, it looks like instead of progressing, I'm regressing in spite of my best effort. Which is never true, but that's the way your vehicle would have you look at it during that period that you're not capable of seeing progress. But in that period, while you're working hard and you're not seeing progress, and you might even see yourself as regressing, you send out if your head is in the right place, you send out very, very strong signals of abhorring and hatred for those weaknesses and those characteristics, and which sends very, very good signals to your strain. Very, very good signals to your strain. In other words, if your head is in the right place, you're always doing your homework. And your homework is what's most important. But if your head is in the right place during the time that you are sending that hatred for those characteristics or for the weakness of your vehicle that's not conquering as quickly as you'd like for it to, and that are responding to your desire to conquer, that hatred for those characteristics, if you're doing any good, has to be extremely strong. Has to be extremely potent. in order for that period to be properly utilized. If it's no stronger than the effort that you were sending out as the regular effort toward conquering that characteristic or that weak area, if it's no stronger than that, then you're not really doing your task. You're slacking. Can you all understand that? It has to be really strong. Okay?
What are you saying? Some of the things, the difficulties, it's one thing to deal with it, but that's not enough. What I have to do is take that weakness or to
Well,
and that's what really...
no, not necessarily. Because if I'm dealing with it successfully. If my effort in attempting to deal with it, if I'm dealing with it successfully, I'm restraining myself, I'm doing my homework, and it seems to come less and be easier to conquer each time, then I'm making a degree of success. But let's take someone who blurts out with remark, and who thinks they're really working on not making comments or not sending bad vibrations to their classmate. And they really are trying to, they feel like they're really trying very hard not to send out that vibration and to have a handle on it and to recognize the feeling when it's coming up. And but let's say that one day, before they even know it, it has just come right out like that. Well, this is a time where that individual, in order to do homework, has to apply a very potent hatred for that characteristic. And saying, I must not have yet come upon the proper tactic. I must not have a good enough overview. I must not have enough next level mind in to gain control of this. And now you might have even gone weeks or months with thinking that your homework was paying off and you weren't really blurting out or making that big blunder. But then it happened. Let's say now it happened, and you hate it, and you hate it with an intensity. I mean, so much so that it's on your mind most of the time. Most of the time, not to the point of interfering with your work, not to the point of your countenance being bad so that others are worrying about you, but to the point of you've got to find a new tactic in that area, some new strategy. Now let's say even while it's on your mind and you're working very hard and you're in such opposition to that characteristic, you're sending out such hatred for that characteristic that your vehicle slipped in and got out before you even saw it coming. It was there. And you couldn't imagine how you could have lost such control as to have it actually express itself. Now, it's altogether possible that 2 days later the same thing can happen. Same thing can happen. 2 days later, same thing can happen. Now, this can develop real generating depth and real building of power within that individual, and more hatred for lack of control and for being victimized in areas that could upset other classmates and affect the craft. Now, and if that potency of that hatred for that characteristic is building and building because of those repeated occurrences, a secondary homework is being done, a very, very good one. But the alternative to that is, if that's happened 2 or 3 times, is to think, well, in spite of my best efforts, I don't seem to be able to get much handle on it. So I'll just go on trying the way I've been trying, and if I lose control, then I'll I'll just have to forget about it because I'm not going to let it pull me down. Do you see what I'm saying? Now, this is an alternative where no strengthening is being done. No depth is being gained. No power is being generated within that individual. They're not calling upon more mind to come in and give them a better perspective and more overview and new strategies. And even though they might say it was simply chemistry, I'm not going to go down on myself because it happened. And you've got to say that. And you've got to mean it. You can't go down on yourself. And it could have been simply chemistry. But your idea is, how can I get enough mind in to override chemistry? In other words, I've got to look at it just clinically enough to see it as chemistry. But I have the mental capacity to override the chemistry. You follow that?
I know with me, in the process of getting this vehicle under control, I didn't like the things that I wanted to work on. I developed a fear of that I was afraid that at first I didn't like the feel of it. And consequently, I tried to conquer it, and then I was afraid that feeling or that problem would reoccur, and then I would have to suffer from it. And I didn't want to suffer. Because suffering meaning I didn't want to feel badly because of what I could have caused somebody else to deal with, and plus myself. Couldn't I just go ahead and shut that?
Sure, go ahead and shut it, Heather. I think it's cool.
Do you understand what I'm saying? If I were dealing with a problem like Joe suggested, I would, it's like blurting out something. If I saw that what I said to somebody caused a severe reaction in them, I would develop a feeling of, I don't want to cause anybody that kind of problem. And I would rather do anything. I'd rather cut my finger on a knife while peeling potatoes than to cause anybody harm. And I don't like to cut my finger, So that's saying a lot, In other words, this is how serious you want to be. You don't want to just live within your own little world and think that whatever you have to deal with is going to come around eventually, because it will not unless you consciously exert the effort to do it. It's a conscious thing.
Well,
because otherwise your task won't occur.
Well, what I was talking about is even if you have that fear of it, and even if you have that dislike for that pain, it can still surprise you and reoccur. The possibility still exists. And you can't then let that fear boomerang on you. You can't then suddenly say, well, I had everything going for me and my energy against this thing, and since it occurred, I must simply recognize the fact that I'm a failure.
But see, you have to develop a security system. This is what we were talking about last time. You have to develop a security system that prevents you when you first begin to think of that. Or you can't blurt out something without having some feeling. Because I don't think any of you are that insensitive. So you have to have a certain feeling develop. And that is when your security system takes over. When you begin to feel that, have that feeling. I have it. And I have feelings that could be very harmful to somebody if I let them take over. But as soon as I begin to feel it, I say, oh no, stop that vehicle, or whatever it takes to make it behave, and it usually goes away. And that's the end of it. But it has to be conscious. You have to develop that security system. Sometimes it doesn't happen as easily as others. It depends upon what it is, and it takes more effort to do it. And but it is possible to do it. it doesn't mean that you will ever be free of these feelings. You might be able to control them. Do you know what I mean? By having your security system help you with it. I know right now the subjects that I can think about that are big no-nos for me.
Yes, but I think what I'm talking about is individuals who, and I don't mean, I'm not differing from you. I'm agreeing with you. But I'm saying that some of the class does not have good facility for security systems. You have good facility for a security system. And some of them, you've got to know when you don't have good facility for a security system. Do you understand what we mean? You've got to know when you don't get the warning signal sufficient to get control. And you've got to know when that's a weakness also. In other words, it's not only the weakness of the area of poor control. You have a weakness in a warning system. And some of you have got to recognize that I have a lousy warning system. And I've got to, therefore, it's like if you've got a certain little section in your brain that doesn't function. You've got to learn the technique of making other areas of that brain do the function that one was designed to do. And that's where some of you have to teach other areas of your consciousness to be responsible for your security system. Because your seemingly natural or relatively easy warning system is inoperative. I have to believe that. You know the reason I have to believe that? Is because I cannot accept that some of you are perfectly willing to fall on your face again and again after you can tell us with all your might that I am not going to do this again. And I want to correct this area. And within a week we get a note saying that the same person said the same thing or did the same thing, and maybe it wasn't quite as blatant, but it still reeked of sarcasm or whatever it was that we're saying. So, and I can't believe that the person who was guilty there was such a lousy homework person, such a lousy class member on a project such as ours, as to think that they were willing to just ignore the teachings we have given you and just ignore the damage that it does to the class to slip in that area, because I can also see that individual suffering almost self-abuse from being the victim again and again of their own mistakes. So they have to have a poor mechanism of warning them. They've got to have something that is not setting them up, that is not saying, now, wait a minute, I recognize that feeling that's coming on, and if I don't do something about it now, I'm going to say just the right thing to completely destroy the vibrations in here. And like some of your brains, and this is just talking about your vehicles, some of your vehicles can sit here and listen to us and listen with all of your might when we tell you that when you do something wrong, it is something within you. It is not something that you could blame someone else for doing, and you believe it when we're saying it. And yet when you're put to the task and someone does something and your vehicle responds to it, it for the moment feels justified in its poor response to that other individual. Which means that what we said to you, you did not know how to apply. You have not learned the technique of applying it. You believe it, and you might try a little bit to improve it so it isn't quite so obvious. Do you follow what we're saying? But it still happens. Doesn't it still happen? Why do we still get the same notes of the same infractions, of the same weaknesses coming again and again? Which means that some of you either are sitting here blasphemously pretending to want to correct those areas and really not caring whether you do or not. Or, the way I believe the fact is, you have not developed a security system, what T was calling it. Your natural security system may be broken down. It may not be working. So you've got to concentrate on it all day long and day after day and day after day until you've got some other brain cells working as your security system. Now, Aniotti, I feel you fighting off yawning, and I can see you're fighting off yawning. And I can understand that as intensely as we're trying to talk here. Why you would let your vehicle get in a condition of that.
Is it too stuffy in people? Yeah. Take some deep breaths. When you feel like you're getting yawn, take deep breaths. You don't have to make a lot of noise. But keep the oxygen going to your brain, because we can't believe that you're sleepy unless you didn't get any sleep last night, which I don't know why you wouldn't. Just Jody?
When you spoke of the hatred, because that hatred can that also be translated to, and using the same illustration, my determination that doesn't happen again?
Well, but what I'm talking about is a hatred for this characteristic of mine, of my vehicle. I mean a hatred for it. Now, if I have that kind of hatred for it, it's automatically going to start building a few stepping stones of determination. But if determination is almost too soft. You see what I'm saying? If I hate it when I blunder in that way, now I'm talking seriously, because even in my dealing with my own vehicle, there are areas that this vehicle disappoints me in spite of my best efforts that have stimulated hatred from me, severe hatred from me. Now, I don't hate the vehicle. I hate those characteristics. I hate the weakness. I hate the fact that that something has happened there that got to the point where it was beyond what I thought it should have been before I had control. Now, it may not be anything that even anybody would ever know about. Even my check partner may not even know about. But I don't know about you. But as for me, and I know as for T, we try to set extremely high standards for ourselves in the control and performance of our vehicles. I feel like some of you, your standard is still very poor. That your standard is if you don't rock the boat and you don't do anything major that seems offensive to anyone else or abusive to your own vehicle, that you're making pretty good progress, and so everything must be going okay. I'll continue the way I'm continuing. Now, that's a very mediocre standard. That's really a less than mediocre standard. Even though you are driving a primitive tool that has malfunctions and inability even to function in many areas, but the mind that's driving it is not a weak tool and is not a stupid tool. The next level mind, if you pull in enough next level mind, it can take a primitive, weak, malfunctioning vehicle and get maximum task performance out of it, no matter what it goes through in the process with the vehicle. Even if the vehicle is privately or silently squealing and squawking and doing everything it can to prove that you're not making any progress and whatever else it might say. You follow what we're saying?
This conversation we've had recently on with the additional of the refrains that we say twice a day, Kurt, you need to that when I think in terms of the vehicle mind, that I have to get mine in, next level mine in, to me, into this vehicle, that conjures up a battle with the mind of the vehicle. And I'm wondering whether, I've been trying to work on this and wondering whether I'm defeating my purpose, but to think in terms of the next level mind in, and that it's outside the vehicle mind is trying to get into it, disrupt the next level mind. That way, it translates in this mind that it's not a fight to take something from the vehicle, it's that the vehicle's mind is trying to compete with the next level mind.
I don't think the next level, your human vehicle mind, the mind in your vehicle competes with your next level mind. I think it's you're not making your next level mind control the vehicle more. In other words, you've got the next level mind has to take the upper hand, but the vehicle mind, I may be wrong.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think if your vehicle's mind is still competing, or even poses to, even acts like it is competing with the next level mind, you know what that indicates? That you have never brought in enough next level mind to let that vehicle have the respect for it that it needs to have. Because it's like someone who has a sophomore in college who thinks that I say sophomore because if you ever went to college, they say sophomore is the guy who knows it all, and yet acts as if he knows it all, even though everybody else knows that he doesn't know half of what he thinks he knows. But it's like a sophomore in college competing with the head of his department, and the head of his department his knowledge is not just textbook knowledge, but his knowledge is experience knowledge. And for that sophomore to be so brazen as to think that he can even talk back to that head of his department means that department head has never shown that sophomore how stupid he is. Now, your next level mind, you've got to let enough next level mind come in to lay the groundwork and show the mind of that vehicle where the real strength lies, where the real wisdom lies, where the real patriotism lies. And I use that word because T and I watched a little bit of the inauguration last night and saw some of the patriotism that was felt. And I couldn't help but think of the patriotism that I feel for the next level. I mean, I'm a bore. I'm such a patriotic person for the next level. And your next level mind should be such a patriot of the next level mind that it's singing and talking and thinking next level patriotism so constantly, and the wisdom behind that patriotism shows so constantly that the best the vehicle can hope to do when it acts up once in a while is to have the kind of response that your hand would have to heat from a plane. You see what I'm saying? But it couldn't have any intelligent argument. It could have just a response, a symptomatic response. Either that, or you have to let the next level mind just recede sufficiently to once and again let the stupid arguments of the vehicle rise up. Now, we feel at this point of the class that really none of you have any justification for letting tapes of the minds of your vehicle play with any validity, with any importance. I mean, if you let them go for 5 seconds, you're asking for trouble.
The only thing, Tony, I feel I feel like your next level mind is still very naive. Do you know what I mean by that? In other words, it's still conned by the vehicle. And we're telling you that your next level mind does not have to listen to that vehicle. The vehicle is trying to make you think that it's competing, but there's no competition there. Do you understand that? In other words, depending upon the age of your next level mind before it came down here. Now, Dexdoty picked a Lulu of a vehicle, and it's a difficult job, and so his mind is bound to be strong enough to handle that vehicle. But it can still be a little naive to believe what it hears. And the vehicle says, I'm in charge here, you do as I say. And your next level mind doesn't speak up for itself and say, now wait a minute, you do as I say. And that's the gospel right there. And that's how firm you have to be.
I tell you, one of the
and
best...
that's with the characteristics of the vehicle that it gets. In other words, if it gets an I don't care attitude, the vehicle, then the next level mind comes in and says, forget it. I don't care whether you care or not, but I care, and I'm going to do exactly what I'm supposed to do.
When T said that Dexdoty picked a Lulu of a vehicle, did you feel a bit of a vehicular response to that?
Agreement.
Huh?
Agreement.
Well, that wasn't vehicular agreement then.
I guess not.
No, so the vehicle was keeping its mouth shut if you felt agreement. Now, one of the best things you can do to make your vehicle more vulnerable to next level mind, or to open the doors more to next level mind, is to realize how full of baloney and to actually accept what a difficult vehicle you have, and how full of problems the vehicle has, not only being in the condition of a primitive world, but being chemically off and undernourished and programmed and so over generations in opposition to the kind of information that the next level mind is. But one of the best ways the vehicle can accept it is if I have convinced the vehicle that the vehicle is a very bad vehicle. When the vehicle buys that it's a very bad product, not bad meaning slap its hand, bad evil, not talking about that. Okay. Where is he? Whatever you can do quickly.
So this applies to everybody who has difficult vehicles. We're not just talking to Dexdoty because...
You check, pardon? Okay.
What's our code is there?
Oh, he's on the phone, that's okay.
Well, that's what I was wondering. I was wondering, but I probably can't get it up. I was trying to trick the vehicle by telling the vehicle that the rightful owner, the mind of the vehicle, the rightful owner to this vehicle is the next level mind, and that it's the mind of the vehicle that tries to come in.
You don't even have to lower yourself to that.
Yes.
There shouldn't be any argument of ownership as to who owns that vehicle. Ownership doesn't exist.
I get that feeling that, like, if I'm the next level mind trying to get in, like I'm trying to encroach upon something.
Oh, you're not?
This way I was thinking I didn't have to think that.
No.
Yeah.
Your Heavenly Father, our members of the Kingdom of Heaven, made both of those products. Made the product that you are entering and made the mind that is entering it, and gave the assignment of that next level mind to enter it. Now, if you want to talk about ownership, Both that vehicle and its mind and your next level mind, all are products of the next level.
And we're sitting here spending all this time helping you all to get your mind into your vehicle. And why would the next level take two members or all of us out of the next level to come here to do something if they're going to want you to listen to a vehicle talk to you? That doesn't make a bit of sense, because we could be doing a lot better jobs. No, not better, but we could be doing other jobs than doing this. In other words, what you've got to do is stop listening to the vehicle. It has no say. In other words, the responses that the vehicle has is not the one of your mind, but it doesn't excuse your mind for letting the vehicle get away with it. In other words, you've got to stop that vehicle from vibrating those kind of characteristics so that you can get in better control and show your vehicle, that you can be in charge. And then it will become tamer. The vehicle will become more tame, and it doesn't mean it will ever be free of those vibrations, but they will lessen where you can be in better control of them. Do you understand that?
You know, from the moment we got on the piano roll of our classroom task, where we started talking about your task in relationship to your strain, the signals you send to your strain, from that moment on, anytime your vehicle is doing some talking, you are encouraging your strain to its poorest performance. Because the line is open. The line is open. Do you understand this?
Mm-hmm.
Your strain is getting a permissiveness from you. Your strain is getting a sermon on human responses and human way of thinking and human activity. And it's awfully hard to go back 30 minutes later, and so I didn't mean that. I hope you didn't listen to that conversation just came through.
There's something else that I want to add to what we were talking about just a few minutes ago, and that was sometimes the vehicle, sometimes you like the feelings of responses. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you might think they're smart, or they're cute, or
well, they're physical.
In other words, you don't dislike those characteristics bad enough to not let them happen. You still like the feeling of them, even sensuality. I think you still like the feeling. You still like to feel something towards somebody. Or if it happens to be with...
You don't, but you still permit that luxury of the vehicle.
In other words, the mind hasn't come in to make the vehicle dislike it. If your mind starts talking dislike to the vehicle will begin to dislike it.
If you feed it enough dislike.
Right. In other words, the vehicle automatically, the vehicle is made this way. It's designed this way. Like if I don't want to eat extra pieces of candy, or extra fruit, or extra sandwiches, or whatever else, extra cookies or something like that, then I would say to my vehicle, you are not going to eat anything extra. You're going to eat only what has been designed for you. Why, vehicle says. And you can say, because it is procedure. It is designed that way, and you're going to stick to it whether you like it or not. And this is how you carry on a two-way conversation with your vehicle. If somebody comes up to you and says something to you that could bring on a negative response in you, you're going to say to your vehicle, you are not going to take a negative view of that response. And it says, why not? You say, because it is not procedure, and it is not designed to happen that way. This is not how we do things around here. Whatever it takes. And it's just a matter of having a two-way conversation. And after a while, it gets to where it happens in a split second, before where you don't even have the conversation consciously. It just happens automatically because you have already developed a key for that, or program, or whatever you want to say. And
does he have to go? Has he gone?
He's getting ready.
Okay, Dorothy, did you have a question?
If it's right to bring up, it's kind of on a different topic, but last couple meetings, this was kind of brought up, and I was wondering if it's possible that members of the next level come into human vehicles and occupy someone like a Spielberg or a Lucas, or even some type of leaders or someone in a position of authority in order to generate a specific program or guidance to the rest of the individual. In other words, to put a thought or some kind of guidance or program into that individual so they can go ahead and decide to create something like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, or make a right decision regarding a weapons agreement or something like that.
I don't think so. I think that when the member of the next level comes down, and I could be wrong.
I don't think so either.
I don't think that they get involved in that. I do think that the individuals are looking for something, and the next level might give them some little ideas.
We don't believe, I think we both believe they're capable of doing it if they ever saw reason to do it. In other words, if it was ever critical enough that they felt like it was absolutely necessary to go down and influence someone to not do something or to do something because it was too critical of a significant garden change for them not to interfere in that way. And we feel like they're certainly capable of doing it. But T and I feel like they've developed their farmer's technique. In other words, they have a real good technique for farming. And they know how to plant the seeds in the air. They know how to plant them in areas where there are crops that are eager to drink them up, and that they will materialize those thoughts, and that they keep a very close control mechanism. And I doubt if they would ever, but like I said, I feel like they could if they had to, but it's more done like a crop duster and that kind of thing comes in the atmosphere.
I don't think Close Encounters contributed that much, even though it was entertainment and it was fun. But I really believe that they would spend more time on other things than that. Okay, Russ?
On a situation where you've got a thing at the same time, if a member of this level needs to come down to do some sort of physical task, rather than enter a human vehicle or come in his own vehicle, would he come in, like, say, a vehicle that's been brought back, like these vehicles that I was trying to figure out, understand when you first mentioned about they might enter a human vehicle rather than come in their own vehicle.
Well, I've been thinking about that since we left, and Joe and I have talked just a little bit about it. And I don't know, let's say that I don't really know if that was correct. It sounds right to me about members coming and using the vehicles, but I don't know if they aren't able to control them with their mind, you know.
Would they use like a suit of clothes, something that's not really a next level vehicle, but
You mean a human on this garden?
Well, rather than one of the humans on this garden, but even know.
Well, I think even that would be crude. I think that their technical advancement is beyond having to come in and use a suit of clothes in that way. I think that if it was important that they get a point across very quickly and either stop something or start something, that they could manipulate like puppets from a distance those that were in a position of needing to be the puppets at the time.
Okay, and that makes me wonder, why are we having so much difficulty?
Well, your task is completely different.
Oh, yeah.
No, I don't see the correlation.
Well, okay. By manipulate, you mean just give them thoughts and, or...
Have them do a task or to get some kind of, go someplace so they can see, get an idea of what's happening.
And it wouldn't make a dent. It wouldn't change the genetic structure of strains for generations to come.
They would just wake up.
You're down here to run 1,000 billion tapes into a zillion genes for an extended period and make a dent in a total change of conduct for a civilization. And that's a completely different thing. If they were manipulating somebody to do a task, that wouldn't change their genetic structure. That wouldn't send out signals to change the world. It would just cause them to push the red button instead of the black one.
In other words, they're not trying to get in control of the vehicle and do a task like this. They wouldn't be doing this. What are you trying to say?
Oh, it's not keep popping into my head.
Well, that's okay. Now, I'll tell you one thing. Back up and remind yourself that, number one, even though we have seesawed on this during certain periods of our understanding, I think we've been consistent in saying that the main purpose, still, if you're coming here, was for you. Because you are the more advanced creatures. You are a more concern. You are actually in their kingdom. And therefore, what you gain by the task is something that could only be gained in this way, and in the process, you're depositing an awful lot of good seeds for future civilization development in all ways. But that has nothing to do with manipulating humans to do certain tasks. That's completely different.
And there are different levels of techniques in the next level. In other words, some older members can do a lot of things that some of the other members can't do. In other words, it depends upon what kind of task has to be done, whether or not somebody who has a vehicle like ours now, in the next level, and can come down and mingle with humans to do a task, only a short task. And what was that? Oh, and
No.
Leave you that about those. Shame on you, Parker. He doesn't even know what we're talking about. If you would leave him out by the nose. Okay. You'll understand there are different, we can't, it's just like saying that all females have the same characteristics, and all male vehicles have the same characteristics, and all professors have the same characteristics, and all the dancers have the same characteristics. You can't place everybody in the next level having the same characteristics or abilities. Okay?
Yes. It also made me wonder if maybe we've had, is it right that we've had these connections with humans since the beginning, not just in the last,
Well, you've probably worked with this garden, but we don't know how close of a connection you've had with them.
Again?
It made me wonder if, like, this clarification about our task of our connection with the humans and what we go through influencing or helping them. It would seem then that there's two things going on. Either one, the minds in these vehicles are not as old as some in the next level who would be able to come in and manipulate someone's existence. Or two, where we've been connected with these humans all along. Because if we weren't connected, then it would be easier to manipulate just a single vehicle. But if we're manipulating a vehicle,
Okay, you're a little off. I think you've got to realize that if a member of the next level came in and manipulated a vehicle for a task, you cannot compare it to what you are doing, because what you are doing is more than manipulating a vehicle. You are getting into the core of that vehicle. You are like, I remember when we heard Dan Fry, the guy who supposed in White Sands went in the spacecraft to New York and back, and then sometime later he said he had communication with the individual who flew that spacecraft, and that individual was in the Middle East, and that he was taking over a human vehicle in order to do a task, and that it was taking him some 5 years to get into that vehicle enough to do the task that he was supposed to do, which was surprising. Cardinal Dan Fry was surprising that individual because he didn't think it would take him more than 3 or so years to get into that vehicle. Now, the point I'm making is you've been at this task for some time, and you still have not saturated the cells of that vehicle. You're not going to have to stay to the saturation time, but the point is it takes a long time to get in with next level mind, with really trying to get to next level mind in consciously. It takes a long time to get in and do what you're trying to do with that vehicle. It wouldn't take so long to maybe just manipulate the brain and manipulate the hands and have it do this and that. But to get into its core and into its genetic structure, so much so that it has a connection with genetic structures of like characteristics in a network, it took a lot of difficult transition. It's like chrysalis in reverse. The effort that it took for a next level mind to get in and actually be in that vehicle enough. Even though we think relatively that none of you plus T and O have much next level mind in these vehicles compared to what we consider the package of next level mind. We feel like that there's still a small amount of it actually in our vehicles. But that amount that is in the vehicles took a long time to get it that far into the vehicle. And we are pounding you and prodding you every day to get a little bit better saturation condition in the genes of that vehicle, so that the seeds that are planted as a result of it will have a more lasting effect. But can you see that there's no comparison between manipulating vehicles and actually going through the lengthy period of getting into one and mixing with the mind of the vehicle itself and going through every argument that the vehicle would have, both as just a response to its physical strain as well as with every argument that the experiential mind has come to its point of development?
It's just like in the maybe even 2 or 3 years, that period before we heard the information, that was the gradual, I can see the mind coming in. Like we said this many times, it doesn't register that way. And I wonder hookup, though, with our current test, is that only 2 or 3 years old, or is that something else that
We consider, as far as T and I are concerned, you've been doing what we're talking about right now. You've been doing it ever since you first grabbed that vehicle and said, you're it.
But you just have
It's
to
just,
gradually work up to what you're doing. We're getting more concentrated now.
Yeah.
Remember how we used to talk about clarifying the butter or getting rid of the muddy, dirty water or whatever? In a sense, you're getting down to just a few specks of dirt right now. But let me say something about the next level mind manipulating vehicles. Actually, they don't manipulate them, I don't think. You know, a human vehicle is very easy to control if you're not limited to these vehicles. In other words, they can just put a thought, they can say, I think quite a few humans have some kind of little device in them that the next level can make contact with. I don't know if all of them do, but I think quite a few of them have, just to keep tabs of them. And
Like a little homing device. Or,
and let's say that they want them to go do something, and then this voice speaks to this Jesus spoke to me and told me to go do this, you know. And sometimes they do the task, and sometimes they don't. And I'm not always saying that when Jesus speaks, that's who's speaking to them. I'm just using it. Sometimes this voice, you know, told me to go over here to this town and do such and such, and then come back, and I don't know why I did it. And this is how the next level, I think, uses the vehicle.
that's what I meant when I said manipulating.
Right.
I meant...
But I didn't want them to
Feminist.
think that all you had to do was make contact with the brain, and it automatically does what they want them to do. The brain controls everything. Right? And the contact there, and I would think that the next level would make contact with the ones who do have the homing device or whatever device is in their brain.
The next level, to tell you the truth, I believe that the next level could even make contact with your vehicle's mind and tell it to be totally cooperative and to do exactly what your next level mind told it to do and give it not another ounce of back talk. And it would do it from that time on. And your job would be over.
Well, the job is getting in control of the vehicle.
But then your job would be ended. I mean, that's not, your job was something else. But what I mean is I still believe that they have the capacity for, if they chose to zero in on an individual and its brain, they could do exactly what they wanted to with it.
That's why we can ask, you know, if it's too much, then it can shut for a while.
What's that?
Is that what you mean when you say sometimes if you just have too much, they let up for a bit and they can stop for a while. So just that you're back in control better.
It's related.
Mm-hmm. Okay, everybody?
The amount of mind that's with us but outside our vehicle, how much can we do from that standpoint?
It's outside of your vehicle?
Or is it strictly up to them? We have to get into this vehicle before we can really...
I don't think you have any excess on the outside like you did when you first started on the getting your mind in. In other words, we're not talking about the mind being on the outside. If we had more
Well,
mind...
he's saying that because I said that as far as we're concerned, all of your next level mind certainly is not inside your
Right, you
vehicle.
mean up in the next level, so to speak, right? You're not talking about being around the vehicle. Were you?
I guess that's what I thought.
That's what, well, see, this brings up an interesting question, and that's where is that mind? What isn't inside the vehicle? Where is it? Is it hovering around my neck, or is it...
If I had that, boy, that's
That's funny, because I don't know. I think T and I probably feel like it's in a safe place. that you've got an umbilical cord type of relationship with it, and that you can pull a little bit more of it as time is right. I don't know, but we don't feel like it just, all that is you hovers around you. We feel like there is some that might be outside of you that gives you a little bit of knowing here and there that you don't know where you got that knowing from, whether it's what's over the hill or...
less now than what it was when you first started getting into your vehicle. Because you don't, like when you were looking for campgrounds, remembering sometimes your mind says, turn out here.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
And I think that was your mind helping you, but now your mind is in your vehicle, and it's kind of limited to your vehicle now. That's why I said if it was hovering around you very much, we would have all kinds of ability, and we could set people if you wanted to.
On the other hand, you might have a lot of your mind in the vehicle, but you can't, because of the limits of the vehicle, it's very hard to awaken it. It's very hard to get it functioning. You follow that? There might be a large percentage of it but it's not easy to get it to function.
Maria?
I've been thinking a lot about having some kind of a more concrete goal. And I know I've got lots of goals, but at the same time I feel like they're shallow. And you just said something this afternoon that just made me think, if the next level could shut off the conflict that we're dealing with the vehicle and the vehicle's mind, isn't it possible that we could still do a great service by being with that vehicle at the same time while on the surface of the planet?
No. Because if in order to do it, it would have to erase the tapes and change the genes and make it totally cooperative. And what you're trying to do, since you've got a hookup with a multitude of vehicles, genetically, mentally, in some way, in order to change what is coming ahead for them in the generations ahead, if that were destroyed, your task would go down the drain.
I mean, the hookup would be destroyed if that conflict was over.
Well, you couldn't do
Well,
anything
sure.
for your strain.
And you couldn't do anything for your strain. The only way they could make your vehicle's mind and the vehicle itself cause you no conflict is to cleanse it of all of its counteraction, all of its all of its genetic responses that are old tapes and that are handed down from the vehicle as well as the mind, and then that would destroy your connection.
Because that wouldn't go out. That cleansed condition wouldn't
No, it's like the tapes have been erased.
We wouldn't have any purpose to
No,
be here.
we wouldn't have any purpose for being here.
You wouldn't gain strength.
No. And you couldn't help the world at that point either. Don't ever feel like you let your vehicle talk. If you think that you don't, or even to use terms of, I wonder about goals sometimes, because if you keep a consciousness with you that as I do every task I do in the day, every thought I have, whether I'm awake or asleep or on the way to my autocraft task or in actions with people at the task, everything I'm doing, I'm on stage for next level performance. And that's a tremendous task. And to think that it isn't a big goal is vehicular talk. Because a vehicle thinks in terms of goals as accomplishments in the world. And you've got a very big accomplishment at hand. You're on stage all the time as a performing member of the next level.
Good point on what I was thinking is that I know what you're saying exactly. Well, that seeing the end result, maybe I don't see it enough.
Well, T and I will both admit that there is a strong desire to see the end result and to see it a lot quicker than you get any glimpse of it. And you have to just cut that off. You just have to not live for seeing that. You, in a sense, you want that idea is a conflict in your head because you want to see progress, and yet progress is not always visible. If you can see that progress of change is occurring in yourself, then progress is visible. If you can see that you're not listening to the kind of things you used to listen to, that your countenance has changed, you're keeping your head more where it ought to be, that you're not sorry after the fact more and more, and things like that, if you're aware of the change that has taken place there, then you are seeing goals accomplished, and the seeds are being planted, and they can't help but pay off.
And it's usually the vehicle talking when it says it doesn't see the end result.
That's right.
Because the vehicle doesn't know what the end result will be.
That's right.
And your mind doesn't.
We don't
because
even.
You've never done this
That's
task
right.
before.
We're kept in the dark in that respect, and we have to shut up the vehicle that would say, I want to know what we're doing. I want to see it in writing. I want a graph up there, some showing this much was accomplished in 78 and 79.
It's really funny how the vehicle tries to say, well, I just can't imagine myself stepping on a spacecraft. I just can't imagine a spacecraft coming down. Well, of course the vehicle can't. The next level, the mind doesn't think in those terms.
Do you know that only in the...
You know what I mean? It's only the vehicle who thinks in terms like that, and it has never been on a spacecraft, so how can it imagine what it is?
That's right. T and I were watching a little Channel 13 thing that some anthropologists had put together this morning, and if those, we'll try to keep abreast of those programs and let you all watch some of those because it was very, very interesting. And they showed, and this is just recent years. I mean, in the last 2 or 3 years, they're still like in '83. They're still finding, excuse me, groups of people where civilization is new to them. And I mean, they've only seen somebody that dresses differently, or seen, like some of these groups of people had only seen a truck or things like that in a matter of a very few years. Now, we sit over here, and you think, well, as long as my vehicle's alive, planes have been flying everywhere and all this, and yet we don't know how they missed those things or what they saw, but when these people came into this village dressed in clothing and looking different, and this was 2 years ago, these people just ran scared and frightened to death. It was like something that they had heard through rumors might happen sometime. That people dressed in clothing like that and that didn't look like they looked would come in and invade their village. And then it showed just a few months later, and trucks were passing down roads that didn't exist, and a plane was bringing in supplies and things. And now you think a couple of years ago, those people, that world was a fantasy. That was in their imagination. Now, as I saw that, I couldn't help but think that the next step, the only step really left, is to see some means of transportation for this so-called civilized world, to see some things that they had seen myths about and movies about, but never really happened. Because it just fell like a pattern, because they were showing these different groups of people that a few years back they were in this condition, and now so many years later they were in this condition, and then over here's another group that's culturally and all in about the same condition that one was 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 50 years ago. And the anthropologists were saying now, what's terrible is if we destroy those cultures and try to make them all civilized according to our culture. Now, the funny thing was, as Thea and I listened to some of this, we could see that some of these primitive societies had cultural characteristics that were far more advanced than some of the cultural characteristics in the so-called advanced societies.
Much wisdom. I asked her, I said, where did they get that information?
Yeah, like this one tribe, they had examined their overpopulation in relationship to the amount of food and water that they had available to them, and they had made a law that no marriages. First of all, they didn't have any children without marriage. They didn't. In other words, an illegitimate child was totally unheard of, or having sex with someone you weren't married to was non-existent. And marriage was prohibited until after you were 32 years old in order to control population. Now, that's pretty smart. You know, because at 32 years old, they're going to have a lot more smarts than they had at 13 or 15 or 16 when they run off and get married, and 3 years later say, that's not the girl I married.
They also had another culture where they had multiple wives. Like one man would have 5 wives, and each wife would be in charge of the animals. Like
one the goat,
one the cows, and I don't know how many other animals they had, but they would call them their compound. You know, this compound belongs to so-and-so, and this compound. And he was walking and talking as a rich man. Here he had no clothes on, hardly, just a little old strap of some sort, and that was it. And it's very primitive, but they had it very well organized.
Had everything sorted out. They had all their religious beliefs, everything all in order.
Now, this is very interesting to see something like this, in my mind. What's your motive?
I was wondering if this technique is the next level to take a more advanced mind of kind of pushing them to like those kind of difficult.
Well, it might be part of the experiment. As Tia and I watched those, we said, this is really fun, because we saw every one of those as different actual experiments, because it's in the next level they're constantly trying to improve the process of development. And you don't know where those minds in those vehicles might have come from very advanced societies. You don't know where those minds came from.
It really was amazing, and we'll look and see when they'll be on again, and if it isn't a good time, they can be recorded and you can watch it
Right.
again. But it's a series that's going on. Just
One thing I was thinking as I heard that is there would be no loss to that individual that was an advanced mind to come into a primitive, there would be no loss at all.
Is it a loss to you? Well, I'm serious. Why would you think that they would not gain strength by being put in a vehicle seemingly more primitive than the one that they had previously occupied? They might. The same pattern of growth that's occurring to you might be part of experiments that are happening at lower levels.
We're doing the same thing. I was thinking that that many times if we talk about going back to the next level in our suit clothes that's waiting for us, and, is it wrong thinking to think that in terms of the mind, which is a package of experiences, doesn't necessarily own a piece of property like clothing. That the mind, the clothing is just like a task tool. In other words, the mind, the package of mind could just be a beam of light or something, and when we have a particular task to do, we get the suit of clothing that is relevant to that task. And that we don't have, or do we actually have a particular suit of clothing that identifies with this mind? I can see.
Yeah, we feel like you do. That there is somewhere a house compatible with that mind. with your next level mind. The house meaning the vehicle.
But wouldn't any vehicle that we were given be compatible?
No, no more than the one you have now.
Oh, I see. Okay.
The one you have now certainly isn't compatible.
Melody?
The other day, there was a program, a story about gorillas that they were teaching climate change. They were amazed at how much more intelligence the gorilla had than they thought. When they communicate in ways they can understand until they taught climate. And then in view of what he was talking about, that tree that you heard screaming, I was wondering how far that intelligence goes down. It seems like he used to have trouble wondering about when minds went from one kingdom level to the other. I couldn't understand how they made that big jump, but now it seems like maybe it's not that big of a jump, it's just a difference in vehicles that makes it look like that big of a jump.
They say talk to your plants and you'll have a happier plant. We don't know.
One of these tribes we were watching this morning believed that they came from the trees. They believed that their minds came from the trees. And one of them, one of the interviewers asked this one what he thought was the most important thing, and he said the development of our spirit in goodness. And T and I looked at him and said, boy, it's in the genes.
Where did it
and,
go?
and that's any minute. That's
They had these,
some of the things they said were you could take the most civilized man anywhere and he couldn't have said things any more significant.
they had these dances where they buried their dead, and then they had these dances that get rid of their spirits. And they dance all night
To get rid of
them, and that releases them, and then they won't be bothered, and it won't be around any longer.
The next day, the young move into the job positions and the authorities that had previously been held by those who had died during that period of time. And then at that deadline, when they have those dances, no one is permitted to think or talk or mention the name of any of those that have died. They are forgotten.
They can't cry.
They cannot cry, they cannot weep, they cannot have any thought for what has passed. They go only forward from that point, and all positions that were held by those are filled. And you saw the next day, and everybody was just laughter and happy, and they were doing it. You know, it was a routine that they were moving into. They were living it.
Yeah, see, I
Pretty
can
smart.
see-
Yeah. Pretty smart.
I can see where they're building genes in that primitive state right there to come over here and miss off, forget about it. Change them all over again.
Earlier when you were talking about how the next level could use a part of the human brain to give that human a message or a suggestion to go do a test, I wondered if I ever see if it would seem like part of a picture you wanted to see if it was accurate. Did the next level, or is there already a mechanism existing in the brain that just simply flipped on when our minds started to enter the vehicles that permits us to send thoughts to our strength? Is it a mechanical thing that's that simple?
Well, when you talk mechanics, your vehicle thinks in terms of mechanics the way...
Well, organic.
Well, it's we can't help but believe that there is something like that. You know, you are caught up in an illusion that humans get caught up in when they don't see a connection between vehicles. Like if you see a branch and you see leaves connected, then you think one way. You can think about energy and thoughts and everything that would go down that branch goes into those leaves. And you can think that way. But when you see humans disconnected from each other, you forget that that branch system exists. And that we know that that branch system exists. and that your vehicles have a double branch system. In fact, you've got 3 branch systems. Every time I realize that, I think, the... Because you know who the Holy Ghost is. That's the next level mind, okay? And you know who the Father is. No. No, that's your mind. That's the vehicle's mind. And the Son is the plant.
What was the Holy Ghost?
The next level mind. Because you are 3 in 1.
Next level mind.
You are 3 in 1. Now, all 3 of those have connecting networks just as real as branch and leaves. All 3 of them. And when you think of all 3 of those as imposed on top of each other, you follow that? I mean, the vehicle itself is still a leaf that still has a living connection with the plant system of its parentage and so forth in a physical sense. And the mind of the vehicle, or the mind that is in the vehicle, because it's not really of the vehicle, but the mind that is in the vehicle. I'm not talking about the next level mind, but the human mind that is in the vehicle, it has a connection with a relationship with its path that it took, just in the same branch tree stem. But it isn't it doesn't send signals back like Lagoti's question. It doesn't influence in that way. And then your next level mind, no one knows as well as I do of the connection of your next level mind with my next level mind. I mean, I can have a lower right molar pain one night and get a note about it the next night. And just because it has registered in your next level mind and you wrote it down, and we'll get the notification of it the next night. And now it's true in all of the aspects. And there's such a connection there that it's like nothing can pass through your consciousness that doesn't come to our consciousness. That doesn't mean we pay that much attention to it, or we're trying to be aware of it, and a lot of times we're trying to ignore it. But the connection is there. It's still... Now, that's why I said we've got to get out of the illusion of things that are disconnected aren't still a part of a root system, because they are. These root systems exist just as real. You know, even Jesus tried to talk to his disciples about that root system. He said that you are all members of my body. Do you know what I'm talking about?
That root system it wasn't existing, or it wasn't activated until our mind came in with the central system got across the root system. I mean, did it exist before we came? Or were these vehicles connected to the rest of
the vehicles were connected to their genetic root system, and the minds of the vehicles were connected to the paths that their experiential minds had taken. But then you imposed a third whole branch system upon it, with the next level mind's appearance on the scene.
Which has the connection with those.
That's what sending the juice through the mind.
The next level mind.
Well, that's what is... The next level mind?
Yes.
Yes. But it uses, the next level mind uses the experiential mind of the vehicle and the genetic structure of the plant itself to send those signals out. It's like they're both microphones for it. And that's the reason you have a task of taking it, the vehicle. It's because without the vehicle, you couldn't get that programming into the other leaves and way down the branch and even into the root system. That's why we say we know that it's going to take years and years for really the fruits of your labor to pay off.
Now, the vehicle, let's say the vehicle has problems, and your next level mind begins to feel that problem, then it would go to leave, to know that problem. But if your next level mind keeps your vehicle under control, then it probably won't go to do. Would you agree?
Well, I think that I don't want to differ with you, but I think that it comes to me either way.
Oh, well,
But I think that it comes to me, but it comes to me as if it's a little raw and troubled if you haven't really done your homework. Now, if you've handled it, it just comes to me like a passing
like a thought.
stream, just went past me, but didn't affect me.
Well, in a sense, that's what I
But if,
did.
yes,
but
but
I
if you're
didn't. I felt like
affected
it
by it,
was bothering.
and you're having to, it's slowing you down, and you're having to deal with it, then it comes more than just a passing film.
Then if you bombard him, then it comes over to me.
That's right.
So if we were to have a goal, as the lady was talking about, it'd be keep the flow going the other direction there all the time, so that you're not proceeding.
Right, all I'm doing is watching the movie. Not being affected by it at all.
Like we do when we watch a movie, we can watch the pictures.
That's what we would be doing. We'd be just watching the movie.
That's right. That's right.
Brenda?
I've got a big one, and I'm going to try real hard, and it might be difficult, I may be way off base, but it was something that was kind of fun, and I had been playing with it, and it kind of came together. Coyote's question of goals and end results. I was thinking that there may not be any end result, but a growing task that just, like we're really just starting on something. Well, we're not starting on something because it started a long time ago. But I was thinking that at one time, mine, went through the task that we're doing now, or something similar. And through that, she developed a network of minds that she was associated with, maybe that were on the garden that task was on. And maybe this is just real fanciful, and I don't know how much there would be to it, but say Doe was one of those minds, or even maybe Doe was the mind of the vehicle that she occupied at the time. And then she watched that mind grow until it became a member of the next level. And that association was there. And then Doe did that with us, and then we might be doing that now. Like, I don't know if I'm, like...
I'm going to interrupt you because I don't think you're right.
Okay.
Okay, because you're exerting a lot of energy, and in other
true.
words, we're individuals. We have tasks in the next level. You all have tasks in the next level. We were assigned this task. We had positions in the next level where he works in one department, I work in another one. Our lab, whatever you call it, you all work in labs, and we needed volunteers. You all were picked, not volunteers, you were picked out of your group, out of the labs that you worked in to come do the test. It is as cut and dried as that.
I don't think this task that you're doing has ever been done before. Now, that doesn't mean that Jesus didn't do his tasks with his disciples.
Different one.
But it was a much more limited task. It wasn't trying to cover the scope that we're trying to cover here, this task. I don't think this has ever happened before. And I think that the next level just decided, well, I'll tell you something funny. I think that your task, if it really does what we hope it will do, will not only turn the humans around, but will cause the humans to turn the entire plant life, animal life around. As far as change in conduct, change in characteristics, change in weaknesses, change in nutrition, in other words, it's not just affecting just humans. And that is if it works successfully. And because I feel like when we get back, if it's working good, that we can manipulate it and make it continue to work better, even from a distance. It's like the farmer he has to get down and he has to dig the hole and he has to plant the seed. But then he doesn't have to be with his hands down under the dirt. He can throw rain on it with his irrigation things, and he can cut it and trim it at the right time, or he can fertilize it. And now you add the next level, which can see the amount of sun that it gets, the amount of atmospheric change that it gets, and everything else that it gets. You could the next level could do 10 times more, 1,000 times more with that little seed of corn than a farmer could, even with the most advanced machinery. You all understand that? That's why I feel like our task, we're desperate to get the seeds planted as firmly as we can get them planted, and with a strong and clear picture in those seeds of what we're trying to get. We want it to be so advanced that generations from now it won't quickly come into obsolescence. In other words, we want your thinking to be so clinical and so overview that it will take a long time for it to be outdated or obsolescent. Because then all that time after we go, or from now until then, until it becomes obsolescent, it can be nurtured from a distance. It can be accelerated from a distance and really materialize. Now, as to who's going to work the field, and in which labs and all, I have no idea. And I don't even know if the connection that my mind has with your minds is a permanent root